All right, welcome to Security Guy Radio from very hot Mesa. Is that where I am? Mesa, Arizona? I travel so much, I don't know where I am. 112 today or some ridiculous thing. Mm-hmm. And welcome to a remote version of Security Guy Radio with our special guest, Under the Shield, Under the Shield Foundation, UnderTheShield.com, and our founder,
Susan Simmons.
Susan Simmons. So, Susan, who's our two guests here with us today?
Well, we have Dennis Cunningham to my right and Tom Lovejoy to my left.
And they're part of, Tom, what association are you with?
I'm with the Chandler Lieutenant and Sergeant Association.
Okay.
So I represent all the lieutenants and sergeants in collective bargaining.
Oh, that's interesting. In California, we usually don't have collective bargaining at that level. That's interesting.
Yeah, we call it something different, but it's pretty much the same thing.
Okay.
So we're the bargaining agent for those sergeants and lieutenants.
Right, and you work with Susan with Under the Shield.
Yes,
and then Dennis, what department?
Chandler, also. I was the past president of the Chandler Law Enforcement Officers Association.
Okay. Now, Susan, tell us what Under the Shield does. It's great stuff, by the way.
Under the Shield is a 501c3 organization that was formed back in 1992, and it started in Birmingham, Alabama, and we provide stress coaching and resiliency training to law enforcement, first responders, military, and their families.
Now, define stress counseling for me.
Well, stress coaching. We don't call it counseling.
Oh, okay, good.
It's stress coaching, and the reason we call it that is because none of us are mandatory reporters. That means that officers can call us, their families can call us, and they never have to identify who they are, where they live, who they're with. They don't have to give us any type of information that could identify who they are.
And that's important because there's a stigma in this business.
Absolutely.
About appearing to be what? Weak, needing help, all those things, right?
All those things, plus the fact that departments can get a little anxious sometimes about officers reaching out for help because there's a perception that there may be something wrong with them and we need to get them off the street, and that's not accurate.
And how do you fund the organization?
Through donations.
Okay,
and
let's get
through the training.
Training. So training is one part of fundraising.
Yes.
And tell us about just straight out donations. How will we donate to Under the Shield?
They can go to our website, which is UnderTheShield.com, or they can go to our Facebook page, and we have donate buttons on both.
Now, Tom, tell me how you work with Under the Shield.
Well, Susan came to us about 2 years ago and told us about her program, and we really identified a need through the union presidents in our city that we needed something a little bit more than what the city would offer through, say, an EAP or something like that. And Susan came and gave her presentation to us, and it was something that after we talked to her, we just knew that we couldn't be without. And it's shown to be very productive for us. Susan has so many different things that she can do to help our officers, and she's on call 24/7, and it's just been a fantastic thing for us to have at our fingertips, especially from the associations, because typically we're the presidents are typically the people that you go to as officers to find out where you can get some help or
that's a good point.
Like that if you're getting stressed out. So it's just been a great contact for us. And Susan's, she's awesome because anytime we get something that's going on, like an officer involved shooting or something like that, I can give her a call and she can be out or she comes out or she'll be available by telephone immediately.
I've noticed that.
Yeah.
Waiting for the phone was ringing while we're setting up here.
Lot.
Yeah. Now, Dennis, if you're the past president.
Correct.
So how might an officer approached you in the past before Under the Shield, and what might have you been able to do before Susan came aboard?
Well,
differentiate the two,
Well, I'll be perfectly honest. They would have to go through city programs and that were instigated by the department. And where I really found the need, and I really thought it was important, is officers could go to her and talk to her in complete confidence because she's not employed by the city.
Right.
She's employed by the union. It's not actually a union, it's a police association. She's actually employed by the association. So, for like our officer-involved shootings, she falls under our attorney. So she has, for officer-involved shootings, she would have attorney-client privilege.
Well, that's brilliant. Very clever.
Well, and I was a litigation
Yeah.
paralegal 15 years before I started this company, so it all falls in line together.
So, Dennis, that makes the police officers feel much more protected and safe.
Right, and see, that was the whole thing. I've been a police officer for many years. I retired out of California before I came here to Arizona, and I've seen a lot of officers, especially in critical incidents, officer-involved shootings, that don't come back from them. And they need someone that they can talk to and feel confident in that it's, number one, not going to get out to all their friends.
Right.
One. Number two, going to get back to management. They want someone that they're going to feel comfortable talking to, that, you know, has one, credibility with them, and they know that whatever they say is going to stay there.
So, Tom, at this, are you lieutenant level?
I'm a sergeant.
Sergeant, okay. So at that level, what do you think, before Susan came on board, what do you think caused them not to come back? Was it just a stigma? Was it the department said, you know what, we can't take a chance? Or what do you think
You
it
know,
was?
that's a little bit of it, but I think the big thing that you have here is that, you know, when you have the city, the administration, they're looking out for the city. So really the city's their client. And they're not, it's not all the time looking out for the officer's best interest in things, because a lot of cases that we've seen throughout the years is that the officers wind up getting thrown under the bus for the, you know, for the better of the city to say, well, it was his fault,
Right.
rather than accepting some of the responsibility, whether it be lack of training or, you know, whatever the case may be. So what we have found is that we got to the point where a lot of the officers didn't trust, you know, the people that the city would send out for us to talk to, whether it be the counselors, whether it be their critical incident stress management teams and things like that. So with Susan and with UnderTheShield, we have, you know, complete confidentiality, and I think that we get a little more out of the officers because they feel like they can talk to her, they can trust her. There's that
Right.
confidentiality that they know that they have, and that it's not going to come back on them. So they can really say everything they want, not be guarded, so that we can get them the actual help that they need, not what we think they need.
Now, Susan, tell me what confidentiality means. You explained that to me, and my mouth dropped open and went, wow, that is confidential. So elaborate on that.
Sure.
I mean, we don't take notes. We don't write people's names down.
We
That's
don't keep anything. There's no documentation. I
Right.
tell them they can be Bugs Bunny or Daffy Duck. I've seen them quite often. And just the fact that there's nothing documented, even if I get subpoenaed to court, which I have been,
right.
there's nothing to produce. And I talk to so many. They can call, they can text, they can email, they can Skype, they can FaceTime, they can private messages on Facebook. So a lot of times I don't even have a clue who I'm talking to. They can come to the office. We have offices all over the country now.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Oh, yes. And so, you know, they can, and they decide. We don't decide for them.
Right.
They pick how they're comfortable talking to us, and there's nothing for anybody to get.
Now, you are not a doctor.
No, I'm
Right.
a master's level counselor.
Okay.
And I'm board certified as an expert in traumatic stress.
And does the establishment, so to speak, for lack of a better term, get upset with you about this kind of treatment?
A little bit.
Yeah. Now, like on the city side, or I mean, where's it coming from?
Yes, it's coming from the management side. They don't understand it. They don't really know exactly how to handle this because they've never dealt with something that they couldn't subpoena records from before.
Yeah, it's a brilliant concept.
And so it makes them a little nervous. Now, we do have some, and actually the chief at Chandler's attitude about it when I first started, I met with him, and he said, you know, the way I look at it, he said, they're going to come to you. You've got credibility. You've got experience. You're obviously good at what you do. And he said, you're going to make my life a whole lot easier. And that's an attitude I wish we had more around the country.
Now, does it always go through associations? That's a better, I suppose, legal way to do it. But do cities or departments contract directly?
No.
They never do. Okay.
No, I had to pick a team.
That makes sense, yeah.
And I picked the team because the cities and counties and states typically have employee assistance programs.
Right.
And the difference between us is that the EAP programs are licensed mandatory reporters. They can be psychologists, counselors, whatever. And I just looked at it as a way to kind of balance the playing field. And it gives something on the association side, just like they have their legal representation.
Right.
And we're just not mandatory reporters.
So, Dennis, what types of incidents would drive an officer to call UnderTheShield?
It depends. I mean, the different stress officers see on a daily basis. I mean, kids' deaths, SIDS deaths, the different kind of calls that these officers have to be exposed to in this day and age. You don't know how it's going to affect a person. We just wanted to make sure that they had some place to go if they had a problem with a call, or obviously the one that you know stands out the most is officer-involved shootings.
Right.
And I will say, and I'm going to put a plug in for our chief here because he let us initiate a program within the city that she is now part of, that our officers, not only do they get the standard buddy officer to whoever they want, they get an officer assigned by the association who goes out with them, who's either been involved in a shooting before or has been an officer who conducted officer-involved shootings. And that way they have an officer there with them to walk him through. We're just trying to give our officers every opportunity to deal with the stress and, the complex circumstances that surround these critical and tragic events. And one of those is the UnderTheShield program, so they have complete confidentiality when they talk to her, and if they need someone to talk to, she's there.
So Tom, Dennis made a good point about officer-involved shooting being the highest kind of level of stress. And I thought, I was shot at 3 times on duty, and didn't stress me out because I didn't get hit. I was happy about that, right? That's my response. And then I got in a fight with a guy, and he died in front of us when we were taking him to custody, and they talked to me for 5 minutes and no lawsuit, and that didn't stress me out. What stressed me out was like some sergeant didn't know what the hell he was talking about. That's trying to tell me how to write a police report, right? I went wacko on that kind of stuff. So it really, Dennis, to your point, it depends on the level of stress that the officer experiences. So Tom, what other types of stress besides a shooting might be something that your officers have come to you about or talked to you about that our listeners really wouldn't expect to hear?
There's all different levels. I mean, we always talk about the shootings because that's what we hear about the most,
right.
And that's the most glamorous thing that there is that you think. And, quite frankly, a lot of the times we get that first question, have you ever shot anybody, when you're meeting, as kids.
It is the first question, right.
Different families, have you ever killed anybody? And it's like, that's not what we take this job for, certainly,
right.
to do that.
Most cops never take the gun out of the holster.
No, and they don't. And a lot of us feel like we're very successful when we haven't had
exactly.
to do that. Because none of us signed up for this job to take a life. That's certainly not what it was. But there are a lot of stressors that go along with that are not necessarily the shooting side of things. I've seen things, just the family stresses that people are dealing with at home that may carry over into work or things that they're thinking about.
Because just interpersonal things, not related to the job per se.
When our officers show up for work, we want to make sure that they're ready for work and they can concentrate on the task at hand. Because where else do you have a job where the first day they hand you a gun and say you can take people's lives if you need to? Where else can you get a job where you're going and you can remove people's constitutional rights? I mean, we have a lot of power. And things like that, and that needs to be handled in the best mental capacity or mental state that we can provide, and that's where the Susan and UnderTheShield has come in and been very important, is because we make sure that we're giving these guys the tune-ups that they need so that they can come to work prepared to deal with the dangerous jobs that we deal with on a daily basis.
It is a lot of power, and I used to. I still do joke with people when they call up and start talking about things in the news, and I say, when I was a cop, I got up, made a cup of coffee, read the paper, yawned, and say, I wonder whose constitutional rights I can violate today. It's the first thing on my mind. I mean, they don't get that type of power and that type of stress, right? Now, what I found was interesting, Susan, maybe you can talk to this. How long have you been doing this, by the way, with UnderTheShield?
Almost 25 years.
25 years has been around? Did I ask you that before? I should have.
We started in 1992.
Wow.
Officially started in 1992.
So I went in 80, went to the academy in 83. I got hurt. I got out in 96, and it took them, by the way, talk about stress, it took them 10 years to retire me, right? Because they're a bunch of you-know-whats over there, right? I broke 2 vertebrae, but it wasn't on duty maybe. I was in a uniform and he took me to the hospital in an ambulance, but it wasn't on duty. But anyway, that's a lot of stress. Mm-hmm. That's 10 years of every time I got a memo, I just went, and the day they retired me, no more stress, right? And that's a passive stress. So how have you found that stress has changed in this job over the years? I mean, when we were, young cops, what wasn't stressful was things I see in the news today as being stressful.
Sure.
And I think that's because I see a different support from management in cities than we used to. And you're an old timer. You've been around. And you've been around too, Tom, long.
Yes, I have.
So I mean, back in the day, it was different, wasn't it? Dennis?
Yes, very much different.
Well, you had choir practice. They
there
had
was
the
camaraderie.
opportunity
You had support
meet
groups in a way,
afterwards,
right?
And now that's frowned upon. At UnderTheShield, we call it the psychological garbage can. Because I think there's so many things that have been removed from officers in ways that they could get rid of their stress.
Right.
And now it's cumulative, and it builds and it builds.
I must say some maybe not appropriate, but we had our ways
of course.
getting rid of things.
Sure.
But are we finding people, are officers, I don't know if more stressed is the right word, or are they less able to deal with the stress because there aren't internal support mechanisms? I went to the police academy again, 2 years ago, just to get recertified if I wanted to be an investigator or something. I was the oldest guy in the class. And the young guys were in there, they were 25, and they lost their job because they got a layoff and they weren't certified. Hey, you want to go get a beer? No. They weren't interested in anything after. And the old timers were like, hey, let's go out, and I just met you, and you're my best friend, and that kind of stuff. Sure. So is this part of it? We're lacking the camaraderie that used to be there? Is it more like, hi, I'm coming to work and it's a job and I'm going home and that's it? Or
I don't think that we're preparing the family side of this, for one thing. And when you define stress the way we do it under the Shield, and that stress is change, stressors are the activating event that bring about the change.
Okay.
And then stress reaction is based on your perception about the change.
Right.
And if you look at other definitions of stress, I think people always equate stress as negative. And the reality is, in this line of work, stress can be very positive.
It's a motivator.
Absolutely. It's what kicks in fight or flight. It can save
Right.
your life. And I don't think we're educating enough about that, for one thing. And so people automatically assume going into this that it's going to be the officer-involved shooting that's going to be the issue. But the reality is everywhere I go, I ask, what's the number one stressor in law enforcement? And they'll tell you management.
Yeah, that's for sure.
I'm afraid of what they're going to do to me because I do my job. And then you look at Ferguson and you look at Baltimore and the other things that are happening. That's the problem. And this stuff builds and it's cumulative. And then you think you're coping, and then all of a sudden one little thing will happen and it throws them completely off track. And now they think there's something wrong with them. And the reality is they just haven't been taught how to take care of themselves.
So, Dennis, when did you go to the academy? First time?
1976.
Oh, wow. And Tom?
1990.
Okay, so I was 83. So those are 90 still a while ago. And did you find that they taught you different things about this stress and stuff back then than they do? And maybe you can comment on what you got taught.
I don't think they really taught us anything about stress back in 76, to be perfectly honest.
I got some information about sleeping and how important health. So the stress was dealt with in the physical fitness side.
Mm-hmm.
Do physical fitness, maintain your health and your sleep, and that was a good part of it, right?
Sure.
So that came through.
Sure.
But you had a stress academy. I don't know about Arizona, because you were in California, right?
Right.
Yeah, so Rio Hondo went to Rio Hondo, and in 83, all the people in my class sued because the TAC officers threw coffee at them, called them names, and started whining about it. And so California said, no more stress academies, right? And I said, if you can't handle simulated stress, you shouldn't be a police officer.
Absolutely.
Now, Tom, was your academy a stress academy?
Yeah, we lived on campus, and it was very stressful.
Okay,
Just had
right.
Sergeant Simmons.
See, I wonder now if Sergeant Simmons, I guess it's a different story. We'll go over that later. I'm just wondering if now these new academies are not, maybe they're not giving you specific training or education about that, but when you're in a simulated stress environment and you get out and you can make it and you're okay, that's your learning.
Sure.
And I'm no super cop or hero, but again, I only got stressed with stupid sergeants, not the actual job. I felt I was trained well and I could respond well tactically. So that didn't stress me out, right?
You know, you're getting into a point at this day and age where now we've got academies where they've got stress cards, and if they get so stressed out, they can say you're stressing me out.
Are you serious?
Stop. So,
really?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my
so
gosh.
really what stress comes down to, we all have it. We get it from home, we get it from lack of sleep, we get it from the job, we get it from the horrible things that we see on a day-to-day basis, we get it from management, we get it from everyone. But what the key to it is, what are we doing to cope with it, and how do we cope with it as an individual? And that's where Susan, where it always comes back to UnderTheShield, because she's able to identify different coping mechanisms that each person has for what they're having, because what may stress Dennis out may not stress me out.
Exactly.
And so
Right.
she's able to identify that and give these people the tools and teach them how to dump their psychological garbage can, which is important because all of us have to do that in a different time. Sometimes we have to roll our garbage can out the front. Some of us go out to the alley and dump it. It just depends on what that is and how we're going to do that. And Susan's been very... she's got a great skill set in being able to identify that with each of us and help us do that.
So tell us some coping mechanisms that you engage with people.
Well, the first thing we have to start with is the physiological. The brain controls the body, but how the body feels impacts what the brain thinks. So if the body is tired, it's malnourished, it's vitamin deprived, whatever, then it sends negative messages to the brain, and now we've got a vicious cycle going. So I always start, it's a whole lot easier to start with the physiological first, and that's the importance of vitamins, proper vitamins, and getting the right amount. But sleep deprivation is really key here. This is Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman and I do trainings around the country together, and we both agree that a huge part, or one of the biggest factors in the suicides that we're seeing in law enforcement, comes back to sleep deprivation.
That's interesting.
And so we have to teach them how to sleep, the proper ways.
Right.
It's not the quantity of sleep, it's the quality of the sleep. And too many studies are out there, and they're saying you got to get 7, 8, 9, 10 hours of sleep.
I don't think so.
I'm a 5-hour sleeper.
I've never slept more than 5. I'm perfectly fine.
Yeah. And so but we also have to teach them to stay away from the sedated sleeps. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of energy. It's a waste of a pill. And that's what doctors are turning to, the Ambiens, the Lunestas, the Seroquels, those things. And those are all sedated false sleep. There are a lot of ways to get natural REM sleep, and we have them all on our website. at UnderTheShield.com. You can go and there's a common sense approach. They can download it. Talks about the vitamins that they need to use and the things that they can do that will help them with sleep.
Now, why aren't guys sleeping?
Why or what?
Why are they not sleeping?
Well, I think
Is
there's
it
a lot of factors.
Yeah, I mean, is it related to the job directly? Is it just
Shift work.
Yeah, shift work's tough. Some people just can't do it.
Well, and we're seeing departments. When I first started, departments were doing the 30-day shift changes, 60-day.
Yeah.
We've got them going backwards. There are a lot of agencies around this country that are changing shifts every 30 days, every 60 days, every 90 days, and I'm thinking, you're destroying families. Wives can't go to school. Work schedules get screwed up.
This is the new norm.
Yes.
Yeah, Dennis, didn't we have like 6 months on and 6 months off or something usually, or ABC team?
When I started, it was the first department I was with. We changed like every month, and then when I went to Lodi in California, when I first got there, every 28 days we would change, and it was horrible.
Oh, that's that LAPD nonsense, the
It's a killer.
28-day rotation thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And then finally we went to, you got to pick your shift every 6 months, and you stay on a shift for 6 months. And if you wanted to, you could just stay on that same shift.
Yeah, to switch
forever.
with a buddy. I mean, I guess
Right.
I was lucky because we kind of had that kind of same thing. And some guys were good with graveyard, some guys weren't. I wasn't
Sure.
great. Yeah.
Sure.
Very interesting. Okay.
And right now, y'all are on what, 12 every year you bid?
Every year, yes.
And they can stay based on seniority or whatever.
Now, what is this driven by in the management? Is it budget stuff? Is it they like to be mean and say I'm in control? I mean, what is it? It makes no sense. I mean, what are they
I've
doing?
actually heard them say that seniority should have no significance here, and I'm thinking that's about the only thing in law enforcement
Listen,
that seniority gives.
I passed that academy, but not by much at my age, right? It's a little physical, 3 weeks, right? And I'm not going to be jumping over a wall. I can jump over a wall once if I was in a patrol car, but that's it. So that's just common sense that the older guys should be, either the less stressful shift or the position, whatever it is, so you don't get hurt in the field. So sleep deprivation, is there direct correlation in any studies between the sleep deprivation and injury on duty?
Well, the first problem with law enforcement is any study is going to be inaccurate because these guys don't want to participate. Again, it's more documentation. It's not going to happen. We talk about statistics in law enforcement and suicide and line of duty death. Well, line of duty death is very easy to document. Suicide's a whole nother subject.
No.
And we're willing to say one every 24 hours. That isn't even close to being accurate. It's probably higher than that.
No, that's sad.
So when you talk about these things, I guarantee if I walked into a police department and said, we want to do a survey on your sleep patterns and that kind of stuff, the information I'd get, if I got any, probably would not be very accurate.
So where do we look to get some data you can work with?
That's going to be tough. We've tried for 25 years. I've actually seen officers take surveys and they'll lay 3 of them out and answer all 3 of them differently.
Now, how about you guys? Have you come up with some self-reporting? Because if they're coming to Under the Shield, maybe they'd want to participate in gathering that data. You might be the first.
Right, and that's why we don't document anything.
Oh, that's right, because they don't even have to document it.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's too bad.
We don't document anything.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't even think that's significant, to be truthful with you, because to me, documentation is more from a management side, but it's certainly not from our side. We don't care if it's 1 person or 100 people that need us. We're going to be there for whoever, whenever. And they just need to know that they can reach out to us, and we'll be there 24/7.
So if somebody comes to you stressed out, we're going to get them physically in shape and get them on the right road. And then what's some other things we use to help them out?
Well, we do a lot of talking. It's talk therapy is really what it is. And what we teach them is we're in the game with them. We're going to try things, and if I make a suggestion for one thing and that doesn't work, we're going to try something else.
Right.
I do try to get them physically active, because one of the problems is adrenaline builds up in your system. And all these guys, for the most part, are going to be adrenaline junkies. And they don't realize how adrenaline, it stores in your muscles and how it winds up impacting your sleep patterns.
Right.
So I get them running sprints at the end of shifts or punching and kicking a bag. A lot of times the issues come down to communication at home, and spouses also are eligible for these services.
Oh,
and
that's
the
good.
same thing applies to them.
Yep.
I use the example in an academy. We would never not teach officers about the importance of cleaning and maintaining their firearms, because what happens if you don't maintain your firearm?
Well, you misfires and you're dead.
It's going to malfunction. You're
Right.
going to have a problem. But we don't teach people how to take care of themselves, and that includes the family, because it's a lifestyle. It's 24/7, 365. And I still have officers coming to me, couples. They'll come in and he'll go, "They taught me in the academy 5 years ago I needed to keep my personal and professional separate."
Well, they did teach that. That's true.
And they're still teaching it.
Yeah.
And he'll say, "So I don't talk to her about my job." And she's going, "Susan, he's cutting me out of his life." Well, he thinks he's doing the right thing. It's admirable. He's doing what he was taught to do, but the reality is he's breaking down the family.
Or some of it's so horrific, you don't want to put that image in somebody's head. I mean, it's
Well,
really,
and I tell them, you don't have to
sometimes.
give graphic details,
Yeah.
but you bring it home in your mood. I was married to a federal agent 20 years. He didn't have to come home and tell me what he had been involved in. I could tell by his mood, the way he closed the back door, if this was a good day or a bad day. And if I don't know what's going on, then I assume I've done something wrong. And then we begin to see communication breakdown, divorce rates are going way up. There's just a lot of bad stuff that's going on that we can prevent.
So Dennis or Tom, it's for you. If any of you guys been on an active officer-involved shooting team or a response or like that?
Well, I have. I mean, anytime an officer gets involved in a shooting, like, so for instance, one of our sergeants gets involved in a shooting, then I will get a call and I will respond to the shooting to make sure that their needs are getting met. And
As the department?
as a part of the association.
Oh, the association, okay.
Yes,
So there's two units rolling. There's maybe the DA's office. In California, we kind of have the DA roll on that. The department rolls. They work together until they separate it. But now UnderTheShield is responding to these things. And how does that work if it's part of the association?
Right.
I mean, back in the day, and I started an association. I started it for UC System. I can't remember that we did that. Or it was frowned upon for the association to be involved. Like, you know what? We'll call you after the fact. We're not going to let you go out there and investigate, right? So how do you work that into a serious incident where the officer needs support? But, you know, to be fair, we got to do an investigation as well.
Well, and it's just like we talked about a few moments ago. You get that adrenaline dump. So you have these guys that are getting ready to go, you know, be questioned, you know, to every minute thing that they did that led up to a shooting and led up to someone dying. So there's a lot of stress that goes along with that. And we see that also with the people that are getting shooting. But where I've seen the more stress is maybe the officer that didn't get a shot off because if he was in a bad position or something like that. And that is really probably the most critical point that we see with officers feeling like they should have done something
That's
that
a good
they
point.
didn't, couldn't get a shot off, but they, you know, or something like that, couldn't defend one of their friends. They weren't in the firefight because maybe they didn't have a clear shot. And those officers are the ones that we see that need the help the most.
How interesting.
And-
I got a commendable restraint for not shooting somebody at a mall that pulled a pair of scissors on me. Because if I shot him, I would have hit two giant people standing behind him that were saying, hey, what's going on?
Sure.
And it was a commendable restraint from the city, but the guys were like, oh, why didn't you just bust a cap in his ass? You know, well, I would have shot somebody else, would have gone through, you know, and yeah, that was a lot of stress.
Right.
Sure.
And so the commendable restraint hanging on my wall with the star on it didn't mean anything
Sure.
compared to the other stuff. That's very interesting. It's a good point.
So, I mean, we see those in those shooting situations. Those are probably the people that need the most stress management or the most help with coping with what they just went through, because they're the ones that go to sleep at night and they have these dreams of, you know, where their gun didn't work or it malfunctioned or one of their friends died and they couldn't do anything. And that's where we lose a lot of our officers in officer-involved shootings. It's not the people that necessarily were involved in it.
Right.
It's the ones that were
that's very
there
interesting.
couldn't do anything. And
Never
we've
thought
had
about
several
that.
shootings in Chandler, and we've lost a lot of officers through really
They just stress out on it.
they do. Yeah, you get PTS, and we're seeing a lot of retirements from that, from people that maybe necessarily didn't take action at that time, but felt like, you know, maybe if I would have done this. It's always the, you know, what if game that they play in their head, and that's where we have to help get them through that.
So Dennis, as somebody rolls out there, does Susan come in first before you go in for your IA? I mean, how does that work mechanically?
Here's actually how it works. Like I said, in the way we have our system set up now, our robbery homicide guys are going to be notified right off the bat. Luckily for us, in our circumstance, our robbery homicide guys are, one of them's the president of the Chandler Law Enforcement Association, and another robbery officer is part of the board. So we're the people on the officer-involved shooting team, because we have like 4 officers that will respond out just to support the officer. He gets his buddy officer, but he also gets a support officer from the officer-involved shooting team from the police association. So we'll make sure he gets their attorney. We'll also make sure that Susan's been called. So if they want to talk to her, they can. If they don't want to talk to her, they don't have to. But we want to make sure that is available not only to the shooting officers, but also those guys that were on scene but may have been in that peripheral position that didn't fire. But like we did have a shooting not too long ago, we had officers that did fire, but we had officers that couldn't fire because of the position that they were in. Those guys need, you know,
I never thought about that. That is really something overlooked, very easily overlooked.
Sure.
right. And that happens a lot more than you would think. I mean, I know one of the events I was involved in when I was in California, we lost one of our officers because he didn't shoot, and he was so traumatized by that. I mean, so it is something that's very real that needs to be addressed. But so we have we have the attorney there, we have the officer who's the support officer for the officer. We also have the officer who was there for him from the police association. So he's got a lot of support from his peers. And then obviously then the investigation's going to come in, from the department side. So
as an extension of the POA, you are functioning kind of like a debriefer.
We do,
Yeah,
yes.
and they get in California. You got to read all these rights to everybody. You know how that is. And I went for my IA when a guy died, and whoever the rep was said, okay, don't say anything, and refuse to talk. And then when they order you to talk. And I go, I was like 23 years old. I go, I don't understand what the hell you're talking about. I'm not talking, but you're ordering me to talk, and because if they order you, then it's not admissible. All that kind of stuff, right? That's very stressful.
Sure.
I didn't want this guy to die. I mean, he grabbed my gun, and then his girlfriend jumped on my back, and my trainee sat there and said, what should I do? And I said, try not to get me killed, and backup couldn't get there. It was a big mess, right? And the guy got in a fight. He died. And I wasn't so worried. I felt comfortable that, the fight was clean, and he died because, he was trying to get my gun. That's the way it goes. Didn't feel bad about that. But the after part was just not as bad as some, right? But it was stressful.
Well, it's a lot of unknowns.
What's going to happen? Am I going to lose my job? Am I going to? Now, luckily, I didn't get sued. Nowadays, I'd be in jail now today, probably, right? That's how the atmosphere is.
Probably.
But yeah, it was stressful, and I didn't have much of anything like this. I just, talked to my buddies at the bar and said, "Let's have a beer and talk about it," and that was it.
Well, and Under the Shield is unique in this program. There's not another program like it in this country. Like I said, we're nationwide.
Yeah. How many states?
Well, we have the Northwestern Division, which is out of Montana, and they cover that region.
Yeah.
We have Southwest out of Colorado. Then headquarters is here in Mesa, Arizona. We have Alabama covers Central and Southern, and we have a division in North Carolina that covers the East Coast.
Now, when I was prepping the last couple of days with you, your phone was going off
Continuously.
I think every 30 minutes.
Probably.
Right?
Probably.
Okay. So is that because you're in this region that's going off, or are the other regions going off like this? Or, I mean, you had some, I don't know if you want to share some of the stories, but you had some pretty serious phone calls.
We did.
And what impressed me was that there's a volume of incidents going on with police departments that nobody's hearing about.
Right.
Because it doesn't make the news because it wasn't 5 bodies, it was only 1 guy or whatever, right? And some serious stuff.
Sure.
So maybe you guys can share some stories about how you're responding to and what's going on in the field that we don't know about. No, I don't need any timelines, just general kind of stories.
Sure. Well, I mean, I deal with suicides quite often.
Really?
Officers threatening. And the problem is people perceive an officer who may be suicidal means that he also may be homicidal, which is such a stretch.
Okay.
That one has nothing to do with the other. And if I can keep them from doing it for 24 hours, we empty their psychological garbage can, and they can move on and then begin to do the other things that I ask them to do, to get their sleep patterns changed, that kind of stuff. Most of the calls that I'm getting right now, obviously, are surrounding Dallas.
Yeah.
I was just in Dallas 18 months ago and provided one of the 8-hour trainings that I do. And so those guys know me, and so they're reaching out.
And 18 months ago, they still remember the training, and they're giving you a call.
Yes.
Very interesting.
Matter of fact, Phoenix had an officer killed here, when was Glasser, about a month ago? And his squad had been in a training I did 2 years ago, and they have reached out and asked for the training to be given again for their spouses. I don't think they had their spouses at that one. And so, it's everything from family issues, kid issues, just not understanding. I had somebody message me this morning that said, how do I support my husband without becoming the bad guy? And I understand exactly what she's talking about. The problem is we haven't trained these spouses. And that's the part that confuses me around the country, because we would never give an officer a gun, a badge, and a ticket book and go out here and figure it out. But that's what we're asking families to do.
Right.
Well, who sees the very early signs and symptoms of stress? The family.
Well, the spouse and the kids, right.
So a wife walks out, sees her husband sitting in the garage. He has his gun sitting in his lap, which may not necessarily be abnormal. She panics. Who's she going to call?
Well, if you call the department, that's it. He's done.
But she's going to call 911
Well, right. That's right.
because she doesn't know where else to call.
Right.
And now we've got additional issues.
Now, do you guys ever have to give a referral, for lack of a better term, outside your grade because it's something that you can't resolve or it doesn't come to an end and you say, you know what? I don't know legally, but ethically, morally, I'm going to say, we got to do this for you.
We can do that. I can tell you in 25 years, I've never done that.
Okay.
We actually have a PhD now that runs the North Carolina Eastern Division, but she's also not licensed. She has the same kind of attitude that I have about it, that I don't want to have to document anything.
Yeah.
But I've gone so far as to
Now,
take...
don't say not licensed. I mean, you guys are educated. You have to degrees and those kind of
Absolutely.
things. Right.
Absolutely.
It's just a
We just
it's a
didn't sit for the
distinction.
test.
Exactly right.
That's all it is.
Right.
It wasn't that we couldn't pass tests. We just didn't sit for them.
Right.
And I've actually taken officers home with me before because they were suicidal and didn't want to go in a hospital. I said, fine, then you're going home with me. And I make them stay and they sleep and then they feel better and then we work through some issues and then we're ready to get them back into some regular counseling or stress coaching or whatever it is. And they can make the choice. If they want, I've had them request to go to someone maybe for some testing. Then I refer. Right. But that doesn't happen very often. But as far as me just making that decision, no.
Well, fair enough.
Yeah.
Now, give me an idea of a volume for an average department. Well, we can use your department. I mean,
oh wow,
is it every week something happens? Is it every month? Or I don't know. I mean, maybe it's daily. I don't know.
You know what you're dealing with? We have 350 employees,
and that's a big department.
And we got a pretty decent sized department. And that's just the police employees. So, yeah, we have a lot of things going on because you're not just talking about things that go on at work. It wasn't just a shooting or something like that. It might be a personal family thing that happened. So you might have a family member that passed away or something like that, and you're having a hard time dealing with that or some stress that's associated with that. Susan gets a call for that. We do have things that happen at work. I mean, I work in the computer crimes unit, so I've got officers working for me. They're dealing with some really nasty stuff that they're seeing on a daily basis, and
pornography, crap, and all that stuff. Yeah, it's nasty.
Yeah, that's putting it mildly.
Yeah.
And so there's some of those things that, and I didn't realize the volume of that stuff until I took over that position last year, and the amount of garbage that these guys were seeing.
Oh, it's
on a regular basis.
It's horrific. I mean, we went to the studios because they did it at the studios, and you just. That may be one of the most difficult things in law enforcement, really.
I believe it
yeah,
is.
It's
I
really,
believe it is.
Yeah.
It's on a daily basis. We're forcing detectives to look at something that by nature is illegal because of the psychological things that it does to you when you look at it.
Sure.
And, one image puts a guy in jail for 10 years, and I've got officers going through
thousands of them,
gigabytes of information and finding 10, 50, 60, 120, 220 images that they're looking at on a regular basis. So, there's a lot of psychological issues that they start, going through, and we have to manage that and stay ahead of it. And that we're able to do that with Susan's help.
Dennis, when you're the president, what do guys come to you about on the family side of it?
See, that was the nice thing. As soon as I became president, almost immediately is when that program started. So as soon as guys would come to me, I go like,
refer.
Oh, so they wouldn't necessarily tell you what the issue is necessarily,
no.
But I need help, and then go right to you. Okay.
Yeah, we gave information out. We gave them phone numbers.
By the way, I just thought about something. So if they told Tom or Dennis what the issue was, is that breaking confidentiality issues?
Well, that's
it
if
might.
they choose to tell them, that's between
them.
them.
It's between them, but it may open it up to not confidential because you're attorney-client.
Right. And I have these guys don't ask me anything.
Oh, no, I understand that part. Yeah.
So, I mean, even if they know someone is coming to me, it isn't like they call and go, hey, did Joe come to you and how's he doing or whatever. But they just refer. And information was given out to all the officers, and they have a phone number that they can call, and we have it route through the office here. And that number is actually what shows up on my cell phone. I don't even have their phone number.
Oh, that's even better.
Yes.
That's brilliant.
Yes. And the only problem is then they can't text me. So I have to have that in my voicemail, that if they need me immediately, in case I'm in a class or in a session, then they can text me and I can step out and take the call. But that's how they reach me. So once they gave them the number on how to get to me and all the information, then there really wasn't any reason for them to go to either of them to talk about it because they knew who they could call.
And if you're using, WhatsApp or one of those things that are a mass text number, they don't have your real cell phone number. That's great.
Exactly.
Talk to me about the training. What do you do for the training class?
Well, we have several programs. One is called Warrior Survival at Home and on the Streets, and that's an 8-hour block that they bring their spouse or significant other. Interestingly, I've actually had to tell people not to bring both because I've had them try that before.
I believe it.
That went over well. We also do, because of short staffing in all the agencies around the country right now, we also do a 4-hour block of that same course, but spouses aren't usually included. They're welcome to come, but they're not going to get the full course.
Right.
And then the other one that's kind of big right now is one called Why Good Cops Make Bad Decisions. And that's a course for supervisors to begin to identify what we call episodic stress, early stages of stress, so that they can then refer them to me or whatever needs to be done. And we keep that person from going into chronic stress, which is when you have to discipline or terminate.
Yeah, that's when it happens.
It's heading things off, and agencies are beginning to call now and going, okay, we want to save our people. We don't want to let it go to the point that we have to either discipline or terminate them, because it's expensive.
It is expensive, and turnover. I forgot what it used to cost when I was a cop, but it's something like $15,000 back in 1984 to get a guy to his first year. I mean, just get him out of the academy and then get him on a job, and then another.
Well, the FBI came out with something 10, 15 years ago, and they said that a 5-year veteran has a value to a department of about $250,000.
Yeah, I believe it.
And when you start looking at liability issues, I actually think it's a lot higher than that. But we can't afford to lose people. How short-staffed are you guys?
We're always short-staffed. Can't keep up with attrition.
Well, this is another thing I got a pet peeve about, and I'm going to ask about how you pay for it in a minute. But I think when I was young, we had 1.2 million cops in the United States, and now we got 800.
I heard the other day 880,000.
Did I miss the FBI memo that crime disappeared and we can lose police officers? It's insane.
Well, and I've forgotten how many millions. What is it? 300 million or something people they're protecting, and it's 880,000.
It's ridiculous.
Cops. It is ridiculous.
The ratio is crazy. I was lucky at Culver City. We had 100,000 residents, and we had 140 cops. We were bumping in 5 square miles. We were bumping into crooks. I mean, they were literally falling in the car, and we had really no crime. But now it's down to 75, right? That all those many years later, and crime hasn't really gone down. So funding's an issue. It's budgets. That's a whole other story. I'm not going to talk about that, but we know what's going on with that part of it.
Sure.
So how do you get funded? Tom, are you as the association paying for this, or is the chief paying for it? Because it does benefit the chief to do the training part. I mean the counseling.
Yes, and that's separate. Yeah. That is separate.
Okay.
We the associations pay for that. We actually, it's a bargain, because it's nice having Susan around, because if we get those calls where I've got this going on. I'm like, I got a number for you and somebody for you to talk to, because I'm not a coach. I'm not probably somebody that you should be talking to.
Well, that's the counseling, but is that for the training too you pay for?
Like the training, yeah.
You train
and
the
they
class.
actually have sponsored training also.
Okay.
Agencies can, associations can.
Agencies can. That part's okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Just the training though.
Right.
But these guys have supported the program to the point they've actually paid twice now for me to come in and do trainings for everybody in the agency.
Now, do you ever train the records clerk that's non-sworn, but
I think we opened it up.
We've opened it up to everyone, and that's the one thing that we've done in Chandler, is that for the last few years what we did is the associations pitched in, and we also were able to do it through some of the donations that we have gotten through Team 905 and through Under the Shield. We were actually able to make sure that we were able to take care of everyone in the department, everyone from the records clerk to the dispatcher to the forensic investigators to everyone in the entire unit, including the chief and the assistant chiefs and everyone, so that they had that. So that we were fortunate to be able to take care of everyone in the entire.
This is a new way to build the camaraderie, Susan.
It is, sure.
Yeah, because we just go out, have a beer, or go out to the river, and do our sea-doos for the weekend or something. But it sounds like a way that everybody has the same training. They share a common experience.
Well, and our stress coaches, we have 4 requirements that you have to meet. 1, you have to have done it, been raised by it, given birth to it, or married to it. We aren't interested in educational background. This is a lifestyle. You have to have lived some aspect of it. Now, some of our coaches do have masters and PhDs, but we also have coaches that are retired law enforcement officers, retired military. That's really the audience I'm tapping into now, because the retirees are our most valuable resource, that we're letting them go home with lots of years of experience.
I don't understand that part.
I don't either.
Yeah, we ought to be on some kind of national call. So if something goes well, there's the Hero 911 to have that.
Right.
That if there's an incident down the street and we can go assist, we do that from a tactical point of view.
Yes.
But you know what? If my chief in Burbank, who I used to work with at the studios, called up and said, you want to come in one day a week and I don't know, train some brand new guy on how to do a report, I'd say, sure. I do it for free.
Sure.
Not as a reserve per se. I would just do it as a volunteer.
Sure.
But they want you to be sworn and all that kind of stuff. And I understand that part. But I do think we lose a lot of resources that way, especially if you let all the old guys go.
Yeah.
The new guys don't know anything.
Well, and the retirees are the ones, they also have a need to be needed. Everybody in law
That's right.
enforcement comes into this
Right.
because they want to help and they want to make a difference. So then we send them home, and then we wonder why they're dying soon after retirement.
Is that statistic still true?
It is still
right.
true.
Because I thought it
Absolutely.
was, and this is one reason I get really pissed off at the cities and their retirement packages. San Jose's bumped it up to 40 years on duty before you can pull your pension. You know, what cop works 40 years? I knew one guy that did. And literally a month after he retired, he died.
Yes.
Right? Because maybe the adrenaline disappeared. I don't know what
Absolutely.
it was. Are we seeing that
That is still happening.
actuary table is still close to true? It's like 5 years after retire on
3
average?
to 5.
Oh, 3 to 5.
Yes, for those guys who don't have something beyond this
Right.
profession.
Or they stay more than 20, I think used to be the number. If you're
Sure.
a 25, 30 guy, that's
Sure.
closer to.
But we are seeing a lot of guys now that are planning for retirement, and they're doing other things, and they're
Yeah.
getting themselves geared, and that's one of the things we encourage them to do. But in using them as stress coaches, we're also giving them a purpose as well.
That's a good idea.
And like I said, it's a 5-day certification, and we turn them loose. They can use their cell phones. They can get on our Facebook page and respond to messages on there. I just think it's a resource that we're not utilizing, so UnderTheShield is going to utilize it.
So, Dennis, how do you pay for this?
We paid for ours through our dues from our association. We had a surplus of funds.
That's nice to hear.
The first year that we had the program, it was paid through Team 905.
What's that?
It's a support group for the police department that basically 905 in Arizona is a backup unit. And
Oh, okay.
And that's and Team 905 was
Like another organization. that helps
another
you guys out. Yeah.
organization to support the police department and support our officers. And like when someone got hurt or sick or injured, Team 905 come in and provide meals and stuff for that officer. Every time we've lost an officer, they come up and help take care of the family and provide financial assistance for the family and that kind of stuff. So that's where it originally came from. And we saw the benefit of the program after the first year and said, okay, we're going to pick up the cost. And I think this is our third year.
It is just
and,
renewed.
and it was just renewed again.
And you pay on a per officer basis? Is that how you
Yes.
do it? Okay. Not per use, but just each officer kind of a flat fee per year.
Right.
Okay. Interesting.
And it includes their spouse or significant.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes.
And,
Now-
and I think, for me, I think that's one of the most important things. And I think that's one thing that when our officers get hired, I think one of the things that they should have to do is bring their spouse to this 8-hour program and say, hey,
Yeah. Have you worked out anything like that with any chiefs so
Not
far?
yet. We're working on it.
Yeah,
We're
it is.
working
It
on
is important.
Yes. And with everything that's going on nowadays, they're now beginning to see the importance more than ever,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Spouses are hurting. They're scared, and they really don't know where to turn. And so we've actually even started a Facebook page. There's a closed group for security reasons called Partners in Crime, and we vet them. So everybody who comes in.
You have partners in crime on Facebook?
We do.
Wow, that's good.
We have a page and we have a closed group.
Okay.
And so the page is kind of free for all.
Yeah.
But then the closed group, we vet everybody who comes into that before we allow them to join, make sure that they are connected to law enforcement. It can be parents. It doesn't just have to be spouses. And it's an opportunity for them to get to know other spouses. We've got them from Australia. We have them from Canada.
Oh, wow. How
And we
interesting.
actually have stress coaches in Canada. And so it's a real good support group. There's a lot of humor in there. There's some serious stuff that goes on. It has turned out to be a really good resource.
What's your toughest case you think you've had on your department?
Toughest case as far as
Yeah, it's like an officer that really went through it. You don't have to give me timelines or anything. Just kind of a general sense. Was it a shooting that was the worst thing that somebody went through? Or
I think the toughest thing that our agency went through is having 2 line of duty deaths within a matter of days.
separate incidents?
Separate incidents.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I think that's probably been the most troubling thing because you're just you're impacting so many people, and it's just shocking. We don't have that many officer involved deaths at our police department. To have 2 of them that close
Right.
really shook us at our core. because
And
that
as we
was a hard thing
speak,
to deal with.
I forgot what the date is today because I'm always
the
behind. The 9th, there was an FBI warning today
Yes.
of a potential attack on police officers around the
Yes.
nation. Right? I mean, this is not, Dennis. This is not our police department. 40 years ago, 30 years ago. It's just different and it's weird. And that alone, I could see people not wanting to sign up anymore. By the way, do you have recruitment issues? It's hard to get guys to get hired?
Qualified people.
Or qualified. Well, or either one maybe. I don't know. Maybe
it is. It's been difficult. And
it's different, right?
The difficult thing of it is that to find the qualified candidates that you need and being able to take it to the top of that list, because we're finding a lot of things that when we're testing, we're going down lower and lower and lower on the list, and then we're actually having to test again to try to get enough qualified applicants. And it's been a lot. It's been a challenge.
So I remember that, and we talked about this earlier about the stress part, right? Have you worked with any academies on bringing back the stress component into the police department? In other words, I'm just an idiot with a high school diploma, right? But I did okay because I didn't think I was smarter than anybody else. I knew what my limits were. I got a B+ in the academy, and that's who they hired. They didn't hire the A guys. All the A+ guys in our academy washed out in 6 months because they're brainiacs and overachievers. They always wanted the really good guy, But the simulated stress, I got it.
Sure.
And I said, this is fun. And they left me alone, right?
Sure. So
are we seeing that? What is disqualifying people? I know you got the checklist, right? Did you have marijuana when I was a cop? No, you can't. Yes, I can't get hired. Now, when's the last time you shot heroin? We'll think about it, right? So we're lowering those standards, but are we also lowering the stress requirements? In other words, you said there's something in an academy where they put up a card.
You can't stress people out in the academy. Come on, it's just like
bizarre.
You had said before.
Is it all gone all around the country? Nobody does it?
It's going more to almost an academic level, even offered in community colleges. My son's 26 years old. He's just finished his service with the Marine Corps. He got it at boot camp. There's nothing worse than parasol.
It's really strange.
And he's the perfect candidate for this. But what's sad is, as a mother, and I never in a million years thought I would say this, but my biggest fear isn't my child being killed in the line of duty. I can almost live with that. It's my fear of him going to prison for doing his job. Yeah. Because he's not backed up by whatever agency he goes to work for. Yeah, and that's gut-wrenching for me to say that about my child.
I went to, when you have these recertification courses in California, there's not that many. And they might be 3 months apart or something, and they're far apart, right? So I couldn't go to L.A. or Orange County, so I had to go to Napa Valley. And when you walk in the police academy, their logo is a shield. Well, it's actually a star with a hot air balloon in the middle, right? Doesn't exactly strike terror in the hearts of criminals with that kind of a logo, right? And it's just this nice, relaxing academy. It's in Napa Valley, and it's beautiful. And out on the grinder, there's these balloons going up, right? And I'm walking around there in the morning, and we're the old-timers coming in. And here's all these cadets just walking around. How you doing? Having some coffee. Lieutenant walks out. Everybody stand attention. Okay, put your coffee down. What the? It's this. What is this? And I said, the TAC instructor, I said, is this your academy class? Is this an extended class, a reserve class? Oh, no, that's the main recruits, for the sheriff's department and everybody else. I was flabbergasted.
But when I started this, though, Chuck, when I walked in the first time in the Montgomery Police Academy to teach, I walk in, and they're all kicked back, and they're like, when are you going to dim the lights? And I said, what are you talking about?
Now, how long ago was this now?
This was in 1992.
Okay, so not your,
Yeah, and I said, what are you talking about? And they said, well, isn't this sleeping class? Hell no, sorry.
Well, yeah, because they say California that 83 was that last stress class. Maybe it started in 83 and just went downhill from there. It's amazing.
Well, I can tell you, I went to the academy, like I said, 1976, and I was in the Army when I went to the police academy. That was, to me, that was like heaven.
Piece of cake, right.
Right. So there was no stress for me.
Sure.
Because I went to, and these guys are complaining because we had to run 5 miles. Well, thank goodness, we only had to run 5 miles. That was a nice day. But so I really don't think our academy was a stress academy. It was actually run by the FBI out of Santa Rosa.
Oh, our guy was Secret Service, and they were Marine DIs that yelled and screamed at you. And they actually hit you a couple times, smacked you. Hot coffee. I mean, the worst I got of it before I started laughing, they get in your face and put their nose and yell at you, and I couldn't keep a straight face. I always laughed. And they got really mad when I laughed, right? Harold, you think this is funny? Sir, no, sir. You're a jackass. And Renosa, you're a jackass. I want you guys to hold hands and skip around the parking lot and say hee-haw, hee-haw. And we had to do that for an hour.
Oh, wow.
That was pretty freaking embarrassing, right? But, I mean, if that was the worst that happened to me, and if somebody yelled at me on the field, I laughed at it. It was like, really? I've had far worse conditioning than that kind of nonsense,
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, well, you think about it, it's fun, right? And
I had a great time.
Yeah, so
and
the
it
younger
was
guys are
from the Army, trust me.
I was 8.
Thank you very much. I needed that.
Now, let's talk about, we got about 5 minutes left. Let's talk about making some money for you guys. So how do we raise the money? Give us some ideas? What are some, you're auctioning off a gun.
We are. We have, actually
let's talk about websites, where to send money. Let's get some money coming in here.
Yes, if they'll go to UnderTheShield.com and hit the donate button or our Facebook page. The other thing that we are doing too is we are partnering with businesses around the country.
That's a good idea.
And we have decals for them to display in their windows if they choose to that says we support law enforcement. And we just ask for a minimum donation of $50. And I think that's important. That it's twofold. One is it supports law enforcement, but the other thing is it puts a message out there to law enforcement.
Right.
By seeing this visual that, we support you. We'd love to see one in every Starbucks. We'd love to see one in every Dunkin' Donuts and every Krispy Kreme, whatever. We joke about cops and donuts, but that's okay. We'll take their money too. And so all they have to do is reach out to us on the website. They can email us or they can just hit the donate button.
You got any sponsors you want to plug?
Oh, we do, and I should have brought them with me. They're listed on the website.
Okay.
We have a partners page on there, and we have them from all over right now. We've actually had a couple of McDonald's up in, I believe it was in North Dakota and Fargo, that were one of the first groups to join.
Well, that's cool.
Us. Yes, and we're completing our first year. And
of the donation program. Okay.
Yes.
Oh, really? Now, how did you fund it before?
Through the training and
okay.
Susan just donated a lot of her time.
Apparently,
and have for years.
More money the better, but what do you find that an average person is given a donation to?
We've
20,
had everything
$25?
from $5 to, we got a $500 donation yesterday.
Yeah.
And where the money goes, because people always want to ask this, because there's a lot of things going on with nonprofits that shouldn't be going on.
Right.
We have virtually no admin cost at all. We cover cell phones and a phone service, but our offices are donated to us. And so,
that's good.
Yes, and that's been huge for us. The market builder here, where we are now in Mesa, has donated an office to us for almost 3 years.
Oh, great.
And so, really, the money is going for travel to get to people. For example, again, I'll be going to Dallas. I'm going to Orlando in September, and to provide the stress coaching.
So I have thousands and thousands of listeners, and they're all cheap. I know that. Although I did one fundraiser once, and some guy got a bunch of money for a domestic violence movie.
Wow.
So I'm going to ask if everybody sent you $1, you get a lot of money.
Great.
Maybe like $60,000,
Then
right?
let's
So
hope they
let's
all
all
give at
send
least
$1.
$1.
All right, just $1, you guys. Come on, let's
Sure.
do it.
Sure.
Susan, this has been really, really fascinating. Tom, Dennis, any closing statements you guys want to make? I mean, I just think this thing is brilliant. By the way, I understand you have a new board member.
Yes.
Yes,
as
who
a
is
matter
that?
of fact, Mr. Harold, you are
Yes,
it.
I'm on the board of directors.
And we're thrilled to have you.
And I was going to do this show before that happened.
Yes, you
right?
were.
Just full
Absolutely.
disclosure.
Absolutely.
But I'm very excited to work with you guys and help you on this stuff. It's really fascinating.
And we appreciate all your help. You've been a huge supporter already, and just looking forward to working with you.
Tom, you happy with the program? You love it?
I can't say enough good about it. And the more donations that we get, really, it's an investment in your officer's mental well-being, so that you know that when you have an officer coming to your home, making a traffic stop or dealing with difficult situations, that you know that they're in the best shape that they can be mentally.
Because we really don't want them to have to pay for it, honestly.
That's right.
I wish these associations didn't have to pay for it.
Now, by the way, let me ask you one more question. We got about a minute. So let's say your association's cheap. They don't want to do it. Can I call you up and pay you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And it's something reasonable, I'm sure.
Oh, we're talking like $50 a year for individuals to sign up for them and their families.
Oh, that's very important. Let's restate that. So you got a department that's not on board. You as an individual officer can buy a kind of a mini response
like
plan,
like insurance policy,
yes, and get counseling.
And it covers your family. Stress coaching.
Stress coaching. I'm
You're
sorry.
going to get that right.
Well, I better. I'll be in trouble.
That's right.
Dennis, Tom, thanks for coming in, and Susan.
I appreciate these guys.
I think you're doing God's work. I'm really.
Well, that's
how
we feel
amazing.
about it. It's a ministry for us.
It's great.
And we're honored.
Well, thanks for coming on Security Guy Radio.
Thank you for letting us be on here.